based on the pilot program that the elementary teachers are doing. But I think it's important to recognize that you can't get a K through 12 program.
Thank you.
Our third recommendation is the opportunity to visit schools and see the programs in action, actually being taught by educators throughout the state of New Hampshire. We're all educators up here. We've gone through the sales pitch and hook and line and sinker, said this is the one and walked away, and then when we try to implement it in the classroom, it's a very different experience. So our teachers are asking to have the opportunity to visit schools throughout the state to see the programs in action, how they're being implemented, so that they can do it just as well when they return to our schools.
Which makes step 2, looking at that ed reports, that much more important, so that we're not running around the state just trying to find things.
And then recommendation number 4 is based upon these steps above. It's just like a process. Like once we identify programs that we think are valuable and effective, then we have a conversation among all the stakeholders. And we read a great narrative of another school district that engaged in just such a process. And there are certain protocols and methodologies that will foster transparency and trust and people feeling like their voice is heard and actual meaningful conversations happen in this step of the process as we aim toward where we're headed.
So the last recommendation we have is, this follows actually what we did on the committee. And one of the things that was really unique I found about our committee is that we had a representative from all schools and all grade levels, which really lent itself to some great or different perspectives. So the recommendation going forward is to engage all of the schools at different levels to, sort of gather data about the impact of what we're doing, similar to what we did on the committee. And that ensures that we do make the best decision for all of the students within the district. And especially, as Carol was saying, there isn't one magic thing that we can do for kindergartners and 12th graders alike. And so, yeah, so we want to continue to include all the schools in multiple grade levels.
So one of the things that we did, we brought this presentation back to the elementary schools so that the teachers could see and hear the things that we had talked about and how do they get involved. One of the things we started off was that we read Sold a Story, which really kind of talks a little bit about the evolution of where we are today based off of things that we were told not too long ago. And so we're encouraging all of our faculty members to take a look at that Sold a Story just to kind of get a baseline of that piece of it. They certainly can go on ed reports and start looking at the different programs that are out there to see if there's ones that catch their eye. And then obviously, as we get going, we're going to lean on this committee because they've been through this for a year, but also reach out to some other stakeholders in the schools that have a vested interest and get them to go out and visit along with the committee members. Before we finish, I just want to commend the work that these guys did. A lot of times with committees, you meet and you have a little bit of homework, and I think they'll attest that. Carol, I think, even complained to me a couple times that, you know how much homework I have from this? So in between one month to the other, there was some legwork that had to happen in order to prepare for that next meeting and be ready to go. Having the groups come together, I think one of the biggest aha moments was that when we looked at data, I brought data with no names on it. So they didn't know whether it was Prospect, whether it was Alton, whether it was Barnstead, or some made-up school that we brought in. As Tess said, it took the emotion out of it, so people were really able to look at it from an objective point of view and cross teams. So they weren't able to sit with just their little group of people. So again, commended for their work this year. Thank you, Allie, for all the hard work and effort you put through this. It wouldn't be possible without your support on this. So. We'll open up to any questions that you might have.
I want to say we have really good teachers on board in both schools, and all 3 schools with us. And so I was very impressed with the work that was being done, the work that people talked about. So, I mean, good teachers do the science of reading, but they just need shape to it. They need to figure out how to approach it as a general group instead of just individual master teachers.
So this is awesome. Thank you very much for all your hard work. You want to say something?
And three of you at least know from 6 years ago that I don't think you should expect your superintendent to be a curriculum leader. If we employ 200 certified educators, you already have 200 people who should be fairly expert in topics related to curriculum. The trick, though, is to harness all that power and make sure we're using data and understanding what students are actually able to do, what students are achieving, to inform their expert decision making. So I'm thrilled. I just want to thank Matt for leading this with everyone here and the folks who aren't, because in my mind, this is how it's supposed to work, right? Reach into the schools, pull educators from the schools, look at real data, and ask honestly, is it working? And when it's not working, that's okay. It just means we have to try something else. To me, this process is the success. And a school district should always be doing this. We should never fall into 8 years go by and we haven't even asked each other why can't the kids read or do math or whatever at the level we're expecting. First, we have to know. And second, we should always be asking that question and leading the educators to ask each other those questions. So I'm thrilled and thank you all.
When you plan on implementing your program for each of the schools, what kind of outreach, did you discuss like what kind of outreach you're gonna do for parents to help support what you're doing? Or, because I mean, I know a lot of the success comes from the home, whether it's kindergarten reading a book at night, every night, or a middle schooler reading for 20 or 30 minutes a day. Like, are you guys gonna hopefully transfer that to the parents to have some say in like making that success happen, or?
Totally.
I hope.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. One thing we grappled with
Yes, yes, and yes.
yes. You know, one thing we grappled with a lot is like what's in our realm of influence, right? And so when we look at programs, many great programs have parental outreach materials associated with them, and that could be one of our look fors in terms of what does a high quality program have, and does it have it, you know, in multiple languages and so on and so forth. And then oftentimes there's with each unit you can send something home to the parents. Here's how you can support your child. And it makes me wonder too, you know, when we go to school visits or create, you know, look fors for our community, what do our kids in our community need? Why not get as much input from families as we can as well? And if you guys have other ideas about how to engage families, please let the committee know. For
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, even if we have done like bingo for books, and we just have a lot of donated books that, I mean, it was amazing. The kids were so excited to win a book, you know. I mean, I think it even starts on that grassroots level,
Yeah.
or to get that engagement
Yeah.
somehow.
Totally.
And I think it looks different at the different levels. Like, that was one of the things, frankly, in the very beginning was like, what is the high school's role? You know, when we're talking about the difference between learning language, like the whole language, you just read a book and magically you're gonna know how to read and spell and whatnot, versus decoding, you know, teaching decoding skills. And for us, that didn't really apply to us unless you were maybe a tier 3, right? So one of the things that we had chatted about was through our embedded honors program. Matter of fact, one of the things we talked about today was how do we know specifically where the struggle is, and how do we create an intervention within the school day to help fill some of the gaps that the kids might have. So on the high school level, we have been outreaching for the embedded honors piece with the incoming 9th graders, and we'll need to continue to do that. I'm glad that you asked that question, because I think we will need to be really mindful of pointing out to parents how we're supporting the younger grades as they teach kids to learn, and what are we doing with it, and how are we ensuring that they don't fall through the cracks when they get here. So that was a great thing for me to have in my mind.
I'd like to say, just so you know, I think I speak for the boards here. We very much support the teachers and these collaborations. To go back to say, some of us were around when we hired Dr. Broderick, and one of the things we hired was combining things for the 3 districts, shared services. But the vision also was to, how do we get Barnstead and Alton on the same page as a funnel to the high school? Because both towns saw that there was an issue, and the kids knew it too. So I'll just say, to me, I think I'm very supportive of this. I hope we see more of this stuff going on, because I do believe it's one community coming up to here, and this is exciting stuff. And there's something else that we can do to support you. Please let us know.
Hold that thought.
I opened my mouth too soon. But I just want to say that out there. Thank you.
And I will say, as a facilitator of processes like this, there can be really, really big feelings, and this can be divisive. I mean, we have been debating since the beginning of public education about how kids learn to read. Horace Mann was a whole language guy. I mean, it goes all the way back. I won't get too historical, but that said, we came in with strong feelings, and this group did an incredible job allowing themselves to be passionate, but to be also open-minded and student-centered, and to hear multiple perspectives without combative bashing, which is so hard to avoid these days. So I will also say, as somebody who's facilitated for a long time, I am incredibly impressed by and proud of this group and appreciative of Matt's leadership, because this is the way we engender ownership. This is the way we make sure our system supports all our kids. So I appreciate the honor of working with you all.
Thank you. I'll give you a round of applause. Now Matt wants to ask for money.
Not tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. That was great. So legislative updates?
I have them in my report. NHSBA.
Yeah.
Probably in your packet
Yeah.
from the School Boards Association.
Anything you want to talk about, or are you good?
I have some in mind,
Okay.
but whatever Barrett, Christina wanted to tell you, it's probably in your packet.
It's
I
in
don't
the
have
packet.
listed in my report, but I did include on the table tonight. This is not a current article, it's about a month old, but I'm bringing it up now because the way legislation ends up working in New Hampshire, this is about a bell-to-bell cell phone ban in state law. So the way the New Hampshire legislature works, there are more than 3 strikes. The legislature sometimes can swing 7 times at the same ball, I think, if you don't mind the analogy. Things start in the House or the Senate, they go to committee, they can stay there, they can come back out and be recommended by either body, they go to the other body, they go to committee again, they can be amended and sent back for concurrence, and they can also kind of stop at any time in all those processes. Then, bills or certain language in bills that hasn't made it through both branches of the legislature to the governor can get attached as amendments to other bills. And this is the time of year when that's happening. Most of the, I think about 1,200 LSRs were introduced in October in the New Hampshire legislature. It's usually between 1,000 and 1,200, which is way too many, really, realistically, but that's how it is here. But now most of them are resolved. It's really a couple hundred that are still alive and things are still happening with. And this is the time of year when the legislature, the House in particular, will move to attach language to especially the state budget, the biennial budget. So the latest as of yesterday is, I believe, and we'll know for sure when we know, that the governor's requested language, which is what this article is about, the governor requested a bell-to-bell cell phone ban in public schools, period. Morning to afternoon. Currently at the high school, we have a pretty good restrictive cell phone policy, but there are certain times in the student day when they are allowed to access their phones. That would go away by state law with the passage of this, which I believe the last signal I heard yesterday was that it'll be reattached, or has been, to the budget. And the governor will end up with the language that she wants. No guarantees, but that's what I think is gonna happen. The reason I wanted to mention it to you tonight is we don't traditionally meet with you in July. So when we see you on August 19th, I won't bother waiting for a policy committee meeting or anything like that, because there's not much to talk about if this has become state law. And the governor's intention in the legislatures, if this happens, would be that this is implemented in the fall. It's not a huge change for us, but it is a change. So if we show up with that language already written into policy for you in August, we'll ask you to do first reading, second reading, and adoption all that night, because you won't really have a choice. So I figured it was worth just kind of bringing this to the top and pointing it out to you right now, and watch the news over the next few weeks.
And in the event this passes, how are schools handling that though? Is it going in a backpack? Like, what are they doing with it? Because you know they're gonna have one.
So I'm sure different schools will have different solutions. I think we've been talking about this for a few years.
Yeah.
We talked about the Little Yonder pouches that are very expensive. I actually think, and Dave's here, he can speak for himself, that our principals and their administrators have been relatively successful with the graduated disciplinary steps that we've had in effect this year. I've heard pretty good reports. Dave, I know it's spur of the moment. I didn't prep you for this, but any feedback?
We do, how do I say this? A cell phone is, to put it very simply, like an extension of a teenager's very being and personality, okay? Now, in many ways, you know, there's, in my personal opinion, but there's a lot of science to this, there's certain addictive qualities of that cell phone and all the apps they use. So what we effectively say is, hey, you're addicted to this, but you can only use little bits and pieces. That's an impossible situation to try to address. Impossible. With that being said, trying to address an impossible situation, we've done, I think, as good as we can do. The idea of, hey, if you're caught, you know, we're gonna take it, get it at the end of the day, it's a daily occurrence. And saying this is not okay, it's antithetical to education. Oh, and by the way, here's a bunch of times where you can use it. It will always be an impossible situation. So, you know, we have that graduated approach. It's worked out rather well, but it has always been a rub and will always be one. I have said publicly in meetings, I suspect one day cell phones will take the course that smoking in schools has done. One day it's just allowed, the next day it's against the law. And here we have an article. When we have a state law, it makes things considerably easier. Can't smoke in schools. Kids still do it? Yep, and there's consequences. I suspect not to conflate smoking and vaping with a cell phone. But again, there are smoke labs. I suspect it would be a similar approach. It's just not acceptable. You can't bring weapons into school. It's against the law. You can't bring smoking devices into school. It's against the law. You can't bring drugs. It's against the law. Alcohol, phones. It's against the law. The reality is, if this comes to fruition, my expectation would be, if you have it, it can't ever be in sight. It's got to be locked up in a locker in the bottom of your bag. If you're found to have it, the consequences will be spelled out accordingly per the handbook, which is backed up by policy.
And I think that what we have in the handbook could continue to work. If this happens, what I think we would bring you, you could change it, of course, in August, but we would just bring you, look, these are the consequences we have in place now when it's not study hall or lunch or whatever it is that we've carved out, and we would just say now the same thing applies all day. In the elementary and middle schools, actually, this wouldn't be. We essentially are bell-to-bell already, so there's no change for us.
Is that the policy in the elementaries?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there shouldn't be.
And we have the same thing there. I think it's 5 steps, right? The first time, the second time, the third time. Eventually, a student just has to drop it off at the, you have some students who have dropped off their phone in the morning and picked up in the afternoon every day because they just don't show that they're learning.
Do the kids have access to their, like, when they check Infinite Campus for their grades and their assignments, do they have like a way to do that on their Chromebooks? They don't need an app or anything for that?
Yep. And so, you know, really a lot of times this comes to a head is telling a 15-year-old you're not supposed to use it in the hallway. Well, good luck when it's in their back pocket. And so that's a lot of times where we run issue, you know, in an active classroom, it's not usually as big of a deal as those semi-structured times walking through the hallway, going to the bathroom. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to address this. I've been speaking to a lot of colleagues and counterparts in other schools. The good news is there's a lot of places that have already done this, the bell to bell. So we have a roadmap. But you know, again, I just keep going back to, we have examples of this in our own state of things that were once allowed in school, and then you come back the next school year and it's against the law. So this will be shock and awe for our current teenagers, but for those of us who are 38 and older, we're like, oh, we've seen this before. Stuff like this has happened in public schools all the time. You know, there's parallels with the seatbelt law as well, and the helmet law. You know, there's a time where if you were 12, you didn't have to buckle up, and then it changed to 18. You know, the examples go on. So I'm not worried about it. In fact, it's just the opposite. I'm elated that we have the power of state law. Can't have it. It's against the law.
How do you think you're gonna enforce it? What are you gonna do with the students when they have their phones? Are you gonna take them from them? How are you gonna get it out of the back pocket?
So I think the beauty of having the state law is this device, it's against the law to have it during the school day. So, you know, it's the same, to answer your question, I would answer a question, you know, how do you enforce not having vapes? If you see it, you have to deal with it. Okay. If a student is found to be in possession, we follow the protocol, we follow the handbook, we follow the policy. This would be no different. I would surmise the consequences might be a little bit different than smoking in the bathroom, but it's the same principle. It's a device that's against the law to you know, be using during the school day. And I think you have to treat it similarly to like a vape, where, you know, it's not okay to say, well, yeah, I have it, but I'm not using it. So I think we have to take a similar approach in this regard.
So what we ban is the use, not possession.
Yeah.
So if a cell phone is in a bag and teachers and administrators aren't seeing it, that's not a problem, actually. But when a student, I just pulled it up, so currently at the high school, if a student is seen by a faculty member using their cell phone, first offense, take it away, return it to the student at the end of the day. Second offense, a parent or guardian has to come pick it up at the end of the day, which could increase the consequences beyond what we can do here. In the third case, parent or guardian has to come in and have a meeting with a school administrator, typically the next day. And that means we're potentially keeping a phone overnight, or in one case this year that I heard about, over a weekend. And then finally, fourth, not five, so there are 4 steps. Beyond 4 offenses, the same student, habitual offenders may be required to leave their phones in the main office upon arrival at school each morning until dismissal time. And we can do that. It's very inexpensive to buy the little back of the door shoe holders.
Yeah.
And you hang them on a wall, and you can tag a phone with a kid's name, and it can sit there all day if it
I think, Mike, the other thing I'd like to add is that I think our faculty and staff did a great job this past year in really sort of making sure that they were adhering to it, right, in the classroom and stuff like that. So, and I think a short time in maybe early October, kids realized, okay, they mean business, and now I need to follow through with that. So I think that's another key aspect to anything, is if we get that buy-in from faculty, which we have already, it'll continue to expand from there.
So this law states school phone ban, so that also is for faculty, teachers, and is there consequences for them using phones? I'm just,
We'll see the language of the law.
well, I haven't read it, but
We'll see.
I'm just thinking, we'll run into that, so.
Yeah, and I think what's really important is to remind ourselves, and this is where I come in as the principal, as does the assistant principal and dean. If children are not allowed to do something, I'm hard pressed to find an example where we go, but yeah, because they're an adult, they can do it, right? So regardless of what the law says as it pertains to teachers and paraprofessionals, if it's against the law for students, my expectation would be you had better not ever be using it in any capacity that a student could ever see you doing that. It's poor example. We want to lead by example as teachers. So that would be my expectation, and that could potentially be, you know, a bullet point or 2 bullet points update to like the professional staff handbook. And that's where we could account for it if the law doesn't do it for us.
All right, anything else you wanna hot button on?
You're welcome.
All right. Next up, a letter in our packet. I'm gonna read out loud so we have it in record. It's from our Dean of Students, Kristen Lee. Dear members of the school board, as this year comes to a close, I spent some time reflecting on my first year at Prospect Mountain High School and wanted to share some thoughts and thank yous. I came to Prospect from a large district that consisted of 9 towns and 11 schools. Coming to Prospect was, I suspected, going to be an adjustment. One of the first things I noticed was how involved the school board is, as well how visible Tim and Matt are on a regular basis. This was such a dramatic change that I wasn't sure what to make of it at first. I quickly learned that this was just how Prospect Mountain operated, and I soon came to appreciate the presence of the board and administration. I most appreciate that you took a chance on hiring me and hiring a dean of student. That was the first of many ways I saw the board support our community of learners. Whether you are serving on a committee or attending a sporting event, you show the Prospect Mountain families how invested you are in the success of our students. Thank you for taking a chance on me and for supporting our schools and its students. So, thank you very much for that correspondence. It's nice to see positive stuff. Next thing here, what do we got here? Finance, which is, Heidi cannot be here tonight, but her reports are in our packet. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? All right, seeing none, we'll move on.
Just one note, the projected budget balance you see at the bottom of the cover sheet, 78,418, that is not what we project as actual unencumbered surplus at the end when we close out the year. That number is coming later, you'll see it, but so the number we project is lower. You can see it way at the bottom, estimated surplus 48,381. Even that, it's gonna go up and down a little bit between now and when we really close out the year.
In our packet, we have a report for Counseling Center from Linda Sheff. Did you want to say anything to that?
Yeah, I'd like to really highlight a few things based off of this report. One of the things that our mission is around personalization and personalizing our learning. We had a 98% graduation rate, 87 out of 88. The one individual who had not finished up is in the process of doing a high set, and hopefully that's completed by the fall. But if you think about what they've done, if you look up earlier than that, we had a lot of kids taking college classes here at the high school, but also online. We had a few that were actually at the college campuses. We had ELOs. We had some kids at Impact Academy. So different ways of getting the credits that they needed for graduation. So the school counseling department did a great job of really working with our seniors to get them to the finish line, and more importantly, looking at what their pathway was for post-graduation so that they could support them. All of our students have career pathway plans, and our school counseling department meets with them on a consistent basis to go over them, especially when they're looking at their schedules, to make sure that if they're heading in a certain direction, they're taking classes that are going to help support that. And 100% of our seats right now are filled at the CTE Center. So.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll go to the principal report.
It's pretty self-explanatory, but I did make it a point to put the actual graduation program in there, just so people could see the actual framework of the amazing celebration we had. And as our assistant principal always does a great job taking point on, Mr. Delbarone, the final Good News Assembly of the Year, which again speaks for itself. We have some really special staff accomplishments, some really special highlights from student groups, and those seniors that wanted to, some specific shout outs from seniors that are leaving us. So I think it's a really special way to end the year. And then the one other update is we've always had department meetings here, we always will. But in conversations with Matt and most of the department leaders is trying to move towards more of a PLC approach. And that grouping would be especially helpful when we're trying to tackle something as a school. For example, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we all have the exact same protocol when it comes to late work, students turning in late work? Right now it differs from department to department and teacher to teacher. Having a PLC group that's representative of every subject and grade in the school to help weigh in on that decision making is invaluable. So I'm hopeful that as job descriptions are updated and co-curricular positions are offered, I'm hopeful to come back in future board meetings and give a lot more specificity on that. But right now, the initial groundwork is being laid.
I see. So much for our graduation. It went really well. The only thing I heard was negative was the guitar was too loud in the stands. But beyond that, I thought it went well. The speaker was a riot.
Having Jimi Hendrix here.
Yeah.
The timing was perfect, like an hour, it was perfect.
Yes,
Yes, it
we
was.
we worked hard. There was, I will go as far as to say an obsessive drive by the principal to keep it under an hour. And I will say we were 59 minutes and change. We did it, and that's what we shot for.
But I think people appreciated that.
Yeah, and the focus was to be efficient without feeling
Yeah, it didn't
like
feel rushed.
we're rushing and missing out on certain experiences. So I think all feedback alludes to that. I think we hit that sweet spot and gave us kind of an example to draw from moving forward.
Matt and I have both seen a lot of commencements, and the thing that impressed me the most about this one was the level of redundancy. Some of which you couldn't see. There were 3 different electrical circuits lined up to power the sound system. So if we tripped a breaker, we could switch over to the second one. And then I say we didn't do this. The principal did this. And then the one you did see.
Oh, it's amazing. One of the, there's binders up there for everybody's speeches. And one of the binders didn't have a page, and one of the kids, so Wyatt, he's up there trying to look at his phone, and he grabs another binder. So backup binder.
The backup binder.
Just gets handed over to him. Here you go. I'm like, that was impressive. I was like,
It's pretty good.
We truly, the idea with an event like that is you get one chance. So every possible thing you can plan for to have a backup, we did that. And so precisely for those reasons, and we will always do that moving forward. So I'm hopeful, again, we've got a good example to draw upon for future. If we ever have to go inside, all bets are off. So we're always gonna hope for that it's
You're
outside.
responsible for the weather also, David. You did a good job this year.
yeah, it's great. And it wasn't too hot, which is even better. All right, next up we have a buildings ground report in our packet, but we also had a meeting before, actual meeting, so I'll turn over to Eric. Do you want to talk about the meeting at all?
Do you want to do those under action items?
Those are, yeah, those are action, but anything you want to talk about the meeting?
Nothing crazy about the meeting, just a lot of year-end stuff that they're looking to get done this summer. They have building maintenance, athletic facilities maintenance, so just a lot of year-end stuff, a lot of stuff trying to get done this summer, going into next year.
So the only thing you'll see on Jim Leclerc's printed report, which is where we are in the packet, is the loading dock stair replacement we've actually dropped out of our requests for encumbrances. So it says will be replaced this summer. As of right now, they won't. They've been roped off for quite a while due to disrepair. It's not that we don't want to and plan to replace them. It's that right now the funds aren't there. So we'll keep working on it. It's the next, one of the next top priorities in our capital plan, and if we can do it out of the operating budget in fiscal 26, we will, and if we need to come up with another plan, we will. But we'll keep you up to date on that.
All right, student representative, none for right now until the fall. The was happy to graduate. Well, I was. Technology report is in our packet. Does anybody have any questions? All right, seeing none. That brings us up to Mr. Zolkis for curriculum assessment.
It was the literacy presentation. That's all I have this evening. I'll have more in August.
Well, I like that. All right. Then we're up to the superintendent. Can you be faster or not?
So, well, I don't have to read my report to you, for one thing. It's on the table, and you got it via email in the evening yesterday. One thing I want to point out is Matt Upton, our attorney, is leaving Drummond Woodsum. I'm already pretty well acquainted with Jim O'Shaughnessy, who heads up the school law group in New Hampshire for Drummond Woodsum. We've already started working with him while they are in transition. A lot of our day-to-day work we do with Megan Glynn and Luke Webster anyway, and there's no change there. So this is just, you should know, because from time to time, the chair, vice chair, members of the committee might want to talk to each other about accessing legal advice, and what next time that comes up, it'll be Jim O'Shaughnessy, not Matt Upton. We're connecting you with. We had an action item for you from last meeting to provide a description of what each committee is more or less responsible for, and I don't know if you asked or not, but I kind of added in over on the right what you should be expecting in the coming year. So if you have any questions about that, happy to answer. I think this is important. I do need an action here on open enrollment. After a public hearing at your last meeting, you made a total of 35 seats available. Next year, after our initial application period, we are at 34. So we have 16 students returning after our first 3 graduates, our first 3 open enrollment graduates. And one of them and her mother came in to find me in the building after commencement. It was wonderful. Very grateful to have had the opportunity to come here, which was gratifying. We have 18 students we've offered admission to and sent scheduling information and packets to. Some have returned those. The way your policy on admissions works now is we're done until August 1st. So as or if additional applications come in, we'll see where we stand August 1st. There's a chance that of these 18 kids, not all of them end up deciding to come. That's just the reality of this kind of thing. So our guidance office will continue to communicate with these families, make sure we've received their course requests, and if we haven't, sometime in the next month, we'll start to say, hey, look, on August 1st, if we have another applicant, we're going to offer your seat to somebody else. We do have 1 space available, as you can see. We're at a total of 34 with 35 available, so we're sort of in the process, but I think it was a successful first month, right, the May application period. The vote I'm looking for, every year I recommend that you make seats available to 9th and 10th graders exclusively, unless an older student is the sibling of one of those 9th or 10th graders. And this is the 3rd year in a row that we've had some kids apply who are older. And what I say to those parents when they contact us or visit is, look, 9th and 10th graders can be admitted right now. If we have capacity, after all the 9th and 10th graders are admitted, I'll go to the school board and ask if it's okay to admit your 11th or 12th grader. So we have a total of 6, 4 who want to come here as 11th graders and 2 who would like to come here for their senior year. In the past, you've been okay with it, but I ask you to give me permission to admit them.
So I need a motion.
Make a motion to allow the 6 upperclassmen to enroll in open enrollment.
Yeah, second that.
Discussion?
Do we need to be aware of any background information? These are applicants that you would willingly accept.
Absolutely.
Someone coming in as a senior, there's no concerns with.
Nope, so we do have criteria, we request records, we look at discipline. I think it's 3 years in, and I don't think we've had a red flag pop up once.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, passes.
Here's my legislative update, which is different from the NHSBA's probably, because the NHSBA has taken your school boards association that you pay dues to be members of, has taken a position on open enrollment, and every bill that was before the legislature regarding open enrollment, your NHSBA opposed, just so you know. I don't need to read this to you either. I shared with you a presentation that I'll be making with a couple of other members of the State Superintendent's Association at that organization's annual conference, which starts tomorrow and goes to Friday. So Thursday, I think, after 3 bills were proposed in the legislature this year, one of which is going to the governor for a signature, I think we're gonna pack the room for this, because I think all of a sudden superintendents in other districts are realizing this is a real thing, even though maybe we didn't all realize that this law has existed since 2009. And not only is it real and does it exist, but the legislature has signaled very strongly this year that it wants to expand this. I'm very confident that next year you will see more legislation like the 2 bills that didn't end up passing this year but were proposed that would remove the adoption provisions of the current RSA. When we became an open enrollment school, each district meeting had to vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 194D. The next move by the legislature that they've been talking about will be to remove that and simply make the state law say that every school is an open enrollment school. The only decision a school board has to make is, do you want to make any seats available, and if so, how many? But the whole idea of opting in or opting out is likely to just go away. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the next legislative session. When I talked about how the legislature at this time of year likes to attach amendments to other laws, the House added the language of their House Bill 741, which would have made open enrollment statewide, universal in New Hampshire. They attached that as an amendment to 2 other laws in the last month. That's the House's way of signaling to the Senate and the governor, we're serious about this. And what I think that means is that going into next October, when LSRs go in, they'll hear from the Senate what some of the concerns were that caused the Senate to say we need more time, we need more study. They'll try to address that in the next version of whatever that LSR looks like. And it's likely to be one of the high-profile items in the New Hampshire legislature in 2026.
Are we still waiting to hear in the Supreme Court?
We are. Arguments have been filed by both sides, and we're simply waiting for a decision now. Or those parties involved in the suit are waiting for a decision now, along with interested bystanders like us.
But yeah, the legislation is still moving, even though that.
So the legislature is
They're not
moving
meeting
independent
on
of the
that
courts.
case.
Yep, so the legislature is changing the law. And House 771, which passed, I'm just not reading it all to you because it's here, right? You have access to it right here. House 771, which passed, was adopted by both the House and the Senate with a couple of amendments, and is now on its way to the governor. So what happens is, these bills get agreed to, concurred if they go to committees of conference. Then they go to the Secretary of State, and how they trickle across the governor's desk is a little bit of a mystery, even I think to some of the people a lot closer to that process than us. So it could be days, it could be weeks, it could be a while, but that's where this is headed. Sorry, I lost track. 771 removes some of the parts of the law, or changes some of the parts of the law that the Supreme Court case is based on.
Yeah.
And some of the other arguments some districts or boards have made about this law. Some of that language has simply been changed now in this new bill.
Supreme Court's waiting on the legislature.
So it's happening in both places at the same time. And I think picking up steam. What we should expect is that this is a bigger topic next year.
Yep.
And I'm sure I'll be walking into a really friendly crowd on Thursday when I talk to the other superintendents in New Hampshire about this topic.
I'm very happy.
Thank you for leading it.
But to answer the question that's not asked that you're really thinking, we're going to have almost $400,000 in receivables, or we do now. Heidi has sent out the invoices for this year. We have about $398,000 in receivables right now. And I'm going to sit down and have a very serious conversation with our auditors this time around. We need to be realistic about how we file our financial reports, right? How we come out of those audits. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here in your open meeting tonight and predict the future, but we've been doing all this work to try to make this system work, right? This, going back to 2000, whatever it was when we started talking about this RSA in here for the first time, we're a school with declining enrollment. There are two solutions to that. One is more kids, another is more revenue. And we're trying to get both. So until it actually works, it doesn't work. And, you know, the fact that things seem to be, it really seems like the tide is moving in this direction, we're not there now, right? I don't have $398,000 in checks sitting in the business office today.
Well, I was reminded there was one other option too, which was layoffs or not filling positions, which we did talk to at the time because there was declining enrollment here, and we talked at the pattern continue going. We were going to have to look at, some of them have been around for it, that we were going to look at, do we have to make cuts in the future? Classes were small and those kinds of things. So this is, you know, there's some resistance at first, but now people are seeing, okay, this makes sense. We don't want our classes to go. We want to keep our advanced classes. We want to keep all these things. We want all these teachers. We want great programs here, and this is an opportunity to do it.
Thank you for saying that. On that note, physics. We've hired a physics teacher. We've taken registrations from students, and 23
right
students.
now.
This doesn't mean they'll all show up in September. Maybe it'll be 18, maybe it'll be 16, but 23 students have registered to take physics next fall.
That's awesome.
So this is why we're doing these things, right? We want to be a school that offers this stuff and vocational programs and welding and you know, for the pathway for every student.
Awesome.
All right.
Anything else? That brings us up to action items. The first one we have in our packet is the action item for lunch prices. I usually would bring this up. We can go over, I mean, you can see at Barnstead, we just did ours the other night. We had to raise ours up because to make up the loss of revenue.
So the high school's a little higher usually than the elementary schools, and this recommendation is consistent. We have to go to $395 to be compliant with the USDA price setting tool. We're proposing $4. The other thing we can do at the high school that Heidi just put one line at the bottom of this memo, prices for a la carte items will be increasing due to rising costs. A la carte items are not part of a USDA lunch. It's a bag of chips, it's a vitamin water, it's, you know, there are rules we have to follow. We're not supposed to have caffeine, we're not supposed to have certain sugary things, but as long as we follow those rules. It's okay to use sales of those a la carte items to help offset other costs in food service, which at the high school level is pretty common. Those prices have been way too low. I mean, we want to be lower priced than a convenience store, but we don't need to be half the price.
Right.
You know, so they're reviewing that right now. You can see that the negative balance here at the high school isn't too bad, but the operating loss continues to be about the same year after year. So our recommendation is a $4 price for next year.
Make a motion to increase the lunch price to $4.
Any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Okay, FY25 encumbrances. Now this is the Eric show. Eric, my friend?
It's whatever you want it to be.
Do you want to talk about it first, and then I'll?
I'm happy to. If the joint board has questions, the Building and Grounds Committee met last month and again tonight to talk about this. We think that number's going to land around $48,000 in unencumbered surplus. Heidi's report had it at $48,500, $300, something like that. You have the option every year of funding professional development costs out of an expendable trust fund called the Improvement of Instruction ETF. Many years you don't do that. We don't budget any money for these PD reimbursement entitlements that our certified teachers have. So all of our teachers and administrators are eligible either by their collective bargaining agreements or by their non-union agreements to have the district reimburse up to $2,000 a year for coursework, for conferences, for other professional development. Generally, most years, that gets taken advantage of at about a 50% rate. So we usually spend about $40,000. This year it's $41,678, and we know that because we've done it, that number won't change. When we have enough surplus, and some of you have experienced this, we'll say you can fund that out of surplus, you don't have to go to the expendable trust. This year, we recommend going to the expendable trust. If you're okay with that, we'll schedule a public hearing, which is what you need to do for that. Again, maybe in September, maybe when we're doing another one, so we can run one ad in the paper and save a little bit of money, and ask you to vote that night to withdraw that money from that ETF. By doing that, you don't have to use that much money from the general fund, and that gives you an unencumbered surplus predicted of $89,678, which would then allow you to do the capital items that are on the rest of this memo. So we got $69,444 worth of building maintenance items. We have to caulk the exterior windows because of some water intrusion problems we've been having. We have some HVAC actuators that have failed and need to be replaced. We will continue the front sidewalk work at a lower price this year. This year, Jim wants to, right outside the front door, there's no curb cut for a wheelchair. You have to go down to one end or the other. And when people drive up front, they tend to drive right to the front door and then find out they have to go to one of the ends. So what we want to do, since we're doing concrete work anyway, as part of this project, is do a curb cut, do 45-degree angles, I guess this way. 3 pads get rebuilt as a result, but we become wheelchair accessible right there at the entrance. That costs less than the $15,000 a year we've been planning, which saves us a little bit this year when we don't have as much money to work with. We also don't have a wheelchair access button to open our front doors, so we could add one of those. I had this conversation with our commencement speaker.
How'd that go?
It was great, actually. Funny guy, as you all experienced. Yeah, no, it was great. Howie was fantastic. He actually told me a story about a condo complex or apartment building where he lived that didn't have any way for him to get in and out the doors. So we can get that fixed, and we've been wanting to put an earphone so we can buzz people in from the office out front. We've been talking about it for a few years. That would get done here too. Outdoors for athletic facilities, we're really looking for ways to start improving the turf quality. So we want to do work aerating and top dressing with sand the baseball and softball fields, knowing that we have work to do on the practice fields for soccer, but the time for that is probably October, November, something like that. But this would get us at the right time of year to do baseball and softball. And then the turfus, which is just at the top of the back page, is dressing for the infield mix that we need. So we get up to a total, when you add in the athletics with the building maintenance stuff, of $85,973. So yes, that is $3,705 under what we think our surplus is going to be. So the motion we ask for is not to exceed, and then our job is to actually make sure we have the money before we spend the money, right? So going forward, as Heidi really closes out the books, if it turns out our estimate is off, we have to prioritize or look for other sources of funding. So that's number one. That's all the stuff at the top to get to that number. Questions there? Okay. The next section is about Fund 5. Fun conversation in the committee. If you're not familiar with how Fund 5 works, it's the revolving expendable trust that money goes into when we rent the facility. So when we rent out the auditorium or soccer fields, or we have a church that has services here on Sundays. They pay rent every month. That money goes into what is called Fund 5. It was very creatively named Fund 5 in the warrant article that created it, so we're not allowed to change it. And interesting thing about Fund 5, at the end of the year, you, the JMA board, are only allowed to retain $10,000 in that fund. So if after we close out the year there's more than $10,000 in Fund 5, you've got to give the rest of it back to the towns. You're also allowed to use the money in Fund 5 to improve the facilities that we rent out. So the proposal here is we anticipate, after we're done collecting revenue for this fiscal year, we should have a little over $23,000 in Fund 5. So we're suggesting spending just under $15,000 to buy some mobile soccer goals with wheels. The ones we have back on the practice fields are embedded in concrete. They can't move, and this is one of the problems back there. So we would take those out and use these with wheels instead. And outdoor speakers mounted on the front of the building behind the stands, so we have real time, all the time, the ability to put up a wireless microphone or stream music or anything for athletic events, for commencement, for anything that happens out on that field. Right now, every time we have something, somebody has to take speakers out and set them up and all that kind of stuff, and run 3 electrical cords, just in case, which we never really did until Dave thought of it. So that's the proposal to spend out of Fund 5. Hope that makes sense. And then the last one, way down at the bottom of the back page here, we're planning to spend just under $11,000, $10,779. We've already encumbered it, so this is not an additional encumbrance. The problem is they're scheduled to do the work on June 30th, and if anything happens that causes them to do it even a day late, then our auditors would look at it as we would have had to have an encumbrance. So we want to ask you to vote to let us do that next fiscal year, even though we're hoping it'll be done this fiscal year, if that makes any sense. So those are 3 different votes that we're recommending and asking for.
So we'll start with the first one, I guess. I make a motion to encumber up to, not to exceed, $85,973 from year-end surplus for the capital purposes identified above.
Second.
Any discussion? And I believe that recommendation was from the group about all these to go forward. No discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye. The second one, a motion to expend up to $14,906 from Fund 5 for the purposes described above.
Second.
Discussions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Third one, motion to encumber 10779 to replace a faulty circuit board in the school's fire.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Next up is we have the thin line driver's education wants to change to the,
Chief Drole's Driving Academy.
It's really just a bookkeeping change. You've already voted to enter into a multi-year contract. It's either 3 or 5 years already, but now it's a different entity. So we thought the safest move would be to record a board vote to change. It's a different business now that you're
Right.
technically.
So so it's my husband, so I obviously won't vote on it, but he's been the only instructor, like classroom or driving instructor under Thin Blue Line here ever since we entered the agreement. So he started working for them like with the intent, and he told them to start his own company at a point in time, and so he's gotten everything that he needs from a certification standpoint, and so as of July 7 we'll start under his own company, but from a student perspective, like nothing changes. It's the instructor that they're comfortable with. And
it's a new vehicles though.
oh yes, I mean it's a new company, so we got new cars, and the DMV came here on Thursday and checked all the spaces that we utilize just to make sure it meets the requirements. And yeah, so we're official. I should have brought it, but we have a certificate that we've got to give you guys to put somewhere, showing that we're certified to teach here.
I just need a motion, somebody to accept the name change.
Make a motion to accept the name change for the Thin Blue Line driver's education.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Do we need to do the windows, Jason?
What's that?
The window bid?
Oh yeah, we didn't do
Oh, we,
that.
oh, it's not on
thank
there?
you.
Sorry, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, where is that?
So, in our packet, there is a window bid inside there as well too, and
I'll make a motion to for Granite State Glass for what were the first and second floor windows at $37,080.
this was the caulking they were talking about, needs to be done, and we're gonna have more coming down the road, for caulking, but this is the first step.
Clearly White Mountain wasn't interested.
You think?
You know why that price difference?
That's what they did.
They must
They
already
don't
have a
want
lot of
the
work
work.
lined up this
They
summer.
don't want the work, they're throwing
They
it.
got the more expensive one.
That's gotta be really good talking.
It is, where we got made that gold. All right,
No, that's right, that's real.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes. Personnel, we have nothing tonight.
I have one really quick non-public item for you.
Okay.
Is that where you want to do this? I think you do.
Well, that's not public, we haven't got there yet.
Oh, sorry.
That's personnel.
Personnel. Go ahead.
Settle down, will you? Cheap seats over there.
Some of us are trying to get you out of here.
Any public input? Open? Closed? Seeing none. Future agenda items, Maureen Fitzpatrick / Terry Noyes.
We're just not gonna forget about this, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
We're gonna come up with a plan for you, make a proposal, make sure you have a chance to
fine.
think about what you wanna do in advance, right? You don't wanna make this decision in May, you wanna make it
Yeah.
ahead of
Right.
time.
Yeah. The 25-26 handbooks, that'll be in August, JMA meeting, state testing, I'm sure, and August meeting where we'll be talking about buildings and grounds. And
You'll see the EOP, the Emergency Operations Plan in August. You have to approve that every year so we can file it with the Department of Homeland Security. Just typical things for August.
All right. Any other business to come before this board? Not seeing none. Future meeting date is August 19th, 2025. This point here, is it other personnel?
I would, this actually qualifies as a non-meeting. It relates to negotiations, so you could